Order. Order. Today I'm here in defence of the schlocky, cringe, teen sex comedies. Why? Because I love them. The prosecution might argue that these films are nothing more than crude and shallow, but I object. I'm here today to prove that these films aren't just silly, gross-out comedy movies, and that they may, just may, have a little bit of heart to them. Well, we'll see, won't we? I'll be looking at the history of the genre, some of the tropes, a little bit of the controversies, and just a sprinkle of what might lie ahead for the genre. Let's refer to the Katherine Jackson Book of Descriptions so we can fully understand this genre. They are movies either about teens or young adults. They centre around at least two best friends, most likely male because a girl could never be the lead of a teen sex comedy. I mean, they didn't even know what sex was back then, right? Oh, no, sorry, I mean, if girls spoke about sex, they would just be deemed as a slut. Sorry, that's what I meant. I'm kidding. But films like Bottoms and Bridesmaids, The To-Do List and Easy A prove that women can do those cringe, gross-out sex comedies just as well as any old Tom, Dick and or Harry. Let's get back to breaking down this genre, shall we? The films tend to be in a high school or college setting. The leads are most likely going to be losers, virgins and underdogs, and almost all of the plots follow the leads going on some kind of mission. Normally one of them trying to lose their virginity or get the girl. Oh, and they also always have a banging pop punk soundtrack. Where are you? I'm so sorry. I cannot sleep. I can't rest my. Okay, so in a way this is already a genre, but I've moulded it to my ideas, sort of like I've made a subgenre of a subgenre. So this is going to be very subjective. There might be films in here that you don't think should be in here, or films that I've missed out that you think I should have in here. At the end of the day, it's not that deep. And I am also a student just trying to get a passing grade, so please, give me a break. What themes does a film need to fit this genre? Well, according to the stats on the letterbox list I made, it is crude humour, slapstick comedy, satire, underdogs, coming of age, school antics, sex. Quite important, isn't it? I have deemed 19 films worthy enough to be on this list. Some of them, like I said before, you might not agree with. I do not care. This is my opinion. I have seen 17 out of 19 of these, and 2 of them I haven't seen. I don't really want to watch them anyway because, let's just say they're a little bit, yeah, I'm going to talk about one of them later and you'll see why I feel that way. But I know enough about them to know that they fit into this genre. So, we have National Lampoon's Animal House, Porky's, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Revenge of the Nerds, Weird Science, Can't Hardly Wait, Idle Hands, American Pie, but like the entire series fits, even the really, really bad and spin-off ones that we don't talk about. Road Trip, Scary Movie, Dude, Where's My Car, Not Another Teen Movie, National Lampoon's Van Wilder, Euro Trip, Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle, Waiting, Superbad, Sex Drive and Road Trip Beer Pong. Now that we've established the ground rules, let's investigate the beginnings of the genre, the films that introduced the raunchy teen comedy formula, sex-obsessed teens, clueless adults, and to say the least, odd situations. Where did it all start? To find out, we're going to have to go back. Way back. First, we must look at the magazine company that produced this film. National Lampoon was a comedy magazine that had its origins in the halls of Harvard. In 1876, the Harvard Lampoon was created by several undergraduate students who were inspired by other comedy and satire magazines. It gained popularity and lasted long enough for Doug Kenny, Henry Beard and Robert Hoffman to like it so much that after graduating in 1969, they licensed the magazine. In 1970, the magazine released their first issue. The magazine was known for towing the line with its comedy, especially when it comes to its covers, but lots of people were often upset by the cover art of the magazines, finding them too political or too sexual. Despite its controversies among the public, the company was still loved by many, especially by high school and university students. So much so, the magazine started to develop spin-offs in formats like books and records, and eventually films, leading us to... Animal House was co-written by Harold Ramis, Douglas Kenny and Chris Miller, and released in 1978. Set in 1962 at the fictional university called Faber College, the story centres around two college freshmen joining Delta Tau Chi, a rebellious, slobbish, failing fraternity that is on the verge of having its chapter revoked. The film is packed with stereotypes of this genre: parties, alcohol and drugs, fights, and lots of boobs. Despite being the blueprint for future comedies that are targeted towards young people, it, like most of the films on this list, have some troubling elements. This film includes homophobic slurs, racial stereotypes, the over-sexualisation of women, even to the point where there is a scene where one of the main characters questions whether or not to sexually assault someone. Now, don't get me wrong, it is used for comedic effect, but to say it hasn't aged well is not an understatement. But then again, it's hard to deny the impact that it has had on the films that have come after. In 1954, four high school friends want to lose their virginity. They go to Porky's strip club to hire a prostitute. The owner, Porky, trips the boys out of their money, dumps them in a swamp, and then craziness ensues. Revenge leads to a character getting beaten to the point of being hospitalised, a car chase, property damage, blackmail, and for some reason a high school band is there. I don't know, okay? I don't know. Despite Porky's being enjoyed when it was first released, being classed as a likeable, lowbrow, coming-of-age comedy, people have since changed their minds, realising it's an incredibly misogynistic and exploitative film that marks its sex and gross-out humour over any depth or substance. Gene Siskel and Robert Ebert have said that it is one of the worst films of 1982. I feel what ruins this film is the outrageous and degrading use of sex and the way they view the women in the film. I mean, there's this scene where the boys are peeping on a girl's locker room. Now, don't get me wrong, that's not a new thing to be done in cinema. The stalker's gaze trope has been a thing that has been used since the dawn of time, but the way they do it is a little bit strange. When one of the characters gets caught peeping, he decides to put his genitals through the peeping hole, flashing the young girls. Now, this is used for comedic effect, but not to be that person. I find it more disturbing than humorous. Shall we look at some reviews for this movie? I think yes. John Stark from the San Francisco Examiner said, "Vulgar, sexist, racist, sadistic, juvenile, scatological, gross movie." Yeah, I couldn't agree more if I'm being honest. Bob Silver from Sacramento Bee said this, and you're not gonna be ready for what I am about to read to you. Okay, just wait. If Porky's is the funniest movie about growing up ever made, then suicide at 16 should be compulsory. Let's just say, if I was a real lawyer and I had to take on this case, I would be disbarred, because there is no way in this entire world that I can possibly defend this movie. The film follows a group of high school students in San Fernando Valley. We follow Brad Hamilton, a popular senior who is playing the field, meaning he's just looking to sleep around before he goes off to college. But he does have a girlfriend, and she does dump him. But it's not because of that, it's just because he's like cringe and embarrassing, and it's just the whole thing. Brad's younger sister Stacey is looking for sex, and after following her friend Linda, who is a bit of a promiscuous character, to say the least. She follows her advice, yo, calm down, and ends up in a love triangle with a peer of hers, Rat, and a older man who is 26 and is called Ron. She has sex with Ron and ends up falling pregnant, and she later goes on to have an abortion. Jeff Spicoli, I don't know. He is a stereotypical. Am I okay? He is a stereotypical surfing stoner who is a big slacker at school, turning up late, not doing his homework, so on and so forth. And he butts heads with his history teacher, Mr. Hand. And by the end of the film, you realise that Mr. Hand is so hard on him because he has faith in him. And it's actually a really nice dynamic towards the end of the film where Mr. Hand just wants to help him. He's like, Jeff, let me help you. My name is Jeff. On Rotten Tomatoes, it comes in with a 78% rating. However, when it was originally released, critics said it was just another film in the wave of teensploitation movies. And teensploitation is a film genre, mainly in America, surrounding basically the exact same themes as the genre I'm talking about, but it takes it to another level. Like, it's in the name, it's exploitative, and Porky's fits into that genre. So that sort of says what it needs to say about that film. Our number one critic, Roger Ebert, back on the case again, called it a scuzzpit of a movie and felt that the situations Jennifer Jason Leigh's character was put through was degrading to young women. He has since come out and praised the movie and grown to be a supporter of the writer Cameron Crowe's, I almost called him Crew, his career as a writer and director, which redemption arc. And unlike Porky's and even Animal House, this film shines a light on its female characters, allowing them to grow to be a little bit more than just objects of sexual desire. I mean, Linda, who is played by Phoebe Cates, her kind of main purpose is to be the sexual object of desire, but it's progress. I say, despite its flaws, it's actually quite a funny and unfiltered look at what it's like to be a teenager who is stepping into the next level of their life, being in that awkward in-between phase of no longer being treated like a child but still not old enough to be treated like an adult. I really like the movie. Yeah, that's all I'll say on that then. Actually, that is not all I'll say on that, because I have a review I would like to read. Stephen Silver from Tilt magazine said, "In the perfect wheelhouse of teen movies, sexually frank, right up to the inclusion of an abortion subplot, but not too crass or exploitative." And that's exactly how I feel about this movie. It didn't make me feel too uncomfortable, whereas some of the films, especially the kind of the 70s and 80s films in this list, they do have a certain way that they make me feel, and it's not always good. Whereas when I watched this for the first time, there were bits where I was like, eesh, but for majority of it, I found it quite an easy watch. I wasn't too like, oh, I can't watch that, that's gross. So, yeah. These three films paved the way for the 90s and 2000s comedy films. They weren't afraid to use sex in a comedic or gross way. They were bold and outrageous, sometimes not for the better, but without them we wouldn't have the classics we have today, and to me that's quite a sad reality to think of. It's crazy to me that in just 4 years these films went from treating women only as side characters to fuel a sexually exploitive narrative, to young women who talk as openly about their sex lives and the struggles they face as their male counterparts. These films certainly have their issues, but I'd say Fast Times has strengths. Fast Times, a comedy teen movie, handled an abortion subplot with great respect and care. It was the 80s. Abortions were still taboo, especially in America, which was being overrun by religiousness. That's how I'll say it. And the fact that a teen comedy movie could take that plot line and not use it as a joke, and use it as a way to be respectful about what lots of young girls were going through. It's commendable. Even Animal House, which is one of my favourite movies, so maybe I'm being biased here, it has its issues, but I think the way it handles its male friendships and the way they work together to try and get their charter, you know, alive again, it's actually quite wholesome, despite it being gross and really weird. That's what I'll say. Right then, let's flash forward to the late 90s and the early noughties, where teen comedies began to come back to life, bigger, cruder, and more outrageous than ever. In this era, the rise of bro culture became a bigger issue than it was before. This is thanks to things like MTV reality shows, early stages of social media, and frat life at universities becoming the cesspool that it is today. And I mean, frat life was already a cesspool before, but it got so much worse as soon as the internet came about. It caused men to become these macho, misogynistic assholes who only cared about slamming beers and banging chicks and winning all the football games. Yeah, and hazing my brothers so they, you know, end up dying. But it was an accident because it was like a tradition, right? Yeah. Oof. But what is bro culture and why is it relevant to any of this? Well, I'm going to tell you, so like be patient, like calm down, like can you take a step back please? I'm about to tell you. Calm down. Bro culture has existed for decades, centuries even. It revolves around predominantly white American young men who tend to be jocks or preppy or party guys, who normally peaked in high school or university. They are normally from wealthy backgrounds. They tend to bully anyone who isn't like them. They are the sharks among shrimp in a school corridor. They talk about women like they're meat, and they treat them like they are shit. They tend to be really homophobic, despite there being a deep and strange homoerotic undertone to all of their friendships. Now, me stating that might seem a little bit contradictory considering I was just talking about Animal House, but I don't believe the characters fit to bro culture. Well, to an extent. Animal House is based around a fraternity, but when you look at the film, Delta Tau Chi is full of outsiders, weirdos, boys that don't quite fit in, the ones that are getting pushed around in the corridor. Yes, they party. Yes, they sexualise women. Yes, they cause a ruckus. But they aren't the bad guys in this circumstance, okay? Maybe I'm just being biased because I really like the movie. Anyway, let's get back to the point at hand. So what relevance does this have? Well, if you were to look at majority of the films on my list, especially the ones that came out in the 90s or noughties, the main characters are never normally the bro-ish frat guys. They're awkward guys, not necessarily unpopular, but not cool enough to be liked by those bros. They're the kind of guys that get pushed around. Take American Pie, for example. Stifler is a bro character, and he literally lives his life to destroy any sort of popularity his friends could have. He makes his friends miserable, okay? He's not a nice person. Stifler, the only good thing about you is your mum. No, for example, like Stifler, he puts a laxative into his friend's coffee, causing him to have explosive diarrhea. And I mean explosive. He blew up that toilet. And it was in the girls' what am I saying that? It was in the girls' lavatories. Yes. But you get my gist. Like, these characters are never the nice characters. Like, the bros, they're never the good characters. They're always the assholes, you know? But for some reason, these films are really popular among them, but they're being mocked to a certain extent. But why is that? Why are they so popular among these bros? Is it the outwardly sexual aspect, the nudity, the partying, the sex, the drugs, the grossness? These films have a sense of irony when it approaches these topics. Take Road Trip, for example. When a female character is seeking guidance, she goes to the girls' shower room where all the women are naked and topless, which is really strange because I don't know many women that do that. Like, just everyone, all strangers, like they barely know each other. Yeah, get your knockers out. But the film takes a step back and you see that the narrator has set it like that for his own fantasy, and everyone around him is kind of judging him and is like, what? Especially the women, because they know that that's not like real or relatable. And it's almost pushing the idea that these films and the men that watch them only want one thing, and that is to see boobies. The way bros flock to these films remind me of how alpha males flock to films like American Psycho and Fight Club, feeling like they can relate. Oh my god, I'm so him, I'm literally Patrick Bateman. But these films are judging them. If I'm being honest, I think they're just too dense and self-centered to realise. It's like these 2000s cringe movies were pushing back against bro culture. A bit of a reach, I know, but it's something to think about. Okay, let's get back to the original point. Do these films have depth? Do they have heart? Or are they just pushing the narrative onto young men that sex is important to the point you should be embarrassed that you're a virgin at 16? Why don't we have a look at Superbad, for example? Superbad is a 2007 American teen comedy film directed by Greg Mottola, written by Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg. They started writing it when they were teenagers, and it is inspired by factors of Seth and Evan's time in the 12th grade. Originally, Rogen was meant to play the character of Seth, with Jason Segel as Evan and Martin Starr as Fogel. Let me see that version. I can only find... I know they didn't film it, and I can only find the table read, but let me see that version. But by the time the film was clear to go into production, they were too old. So instead, Jonah Hill, Michael Cera and Christopher Mintz-Plasse took on the roles. Seth and Evan are childhood best friends who are getting ready to go off to different colleges. Seth agrees to buy Jules, his crush, alcohol for her party as his friend Fogel is getting a fake ID. We find out his fake ID states he is a 25-year-old organ donor named McLovin. While he's buying alcohol, he gets knocked out by a robber. Fogel gives a statement to officers Slater and Michaels. They believe him and drive McLovin to the party. Seth and Evan watch outside as the police arrive. Believing Fogel has been caught, they try to leave, but Evan gets hit by a car. Is it Evan? I swear Seth gets hit. Guys, I accidentally wrote it wrong. But Seth gets hit by a car. The driver agrees to find them alcohol in return for them not pressing charges. He takes them to a party where they hunt for alcohol. Seth gets pulled into a dance with a girl who leaves period stain on his trousers. He tries to wash it off in the basement and finds a fridge full of beer, which he hides in empty bottles of detergent. Evan finds an empty room to call Becca in, his crush, who he is going to get a bottle of gold silk vodka. But a group of drunk guys come in. They think they recognise him and get him to sing a song while they do Coca-Cola.
Not have any more Coke.
Seth gets ready to leave, but gets into a fight with Mark, the host, and the boyfriend of the dancing girl. In the chaos, Seth and Evan manage to get out. While this has been happening, the officers take Fogel on a ride-along. They end up in a bar where they try to arrest a homeless man. He resists, and in this chase, he crashes into Fogel, making it seem like Fogel managed to tackle him. The three of them drink beer, shoot guns, and ignore calls. Yeah. Evan and Seth have managed to escape the party. They start fighting about what just happened, but it turns into Seth stating that he's upset they're going to different universities. Evan tells him it's his own fault for not working hard enough in school. They get into a physical altercation. Evan nudges Seth, and he falls into the road and gets hit by the cop car, smashing the window. Slater tries to arrest the boys, but when he isn't paying attention, they make a run for it. Fogel also makes a run for it, taking the alcohol with him, with the gold slick vodka in. Remember that? I don't know why I told you to remember that. It's like not that important of detail. The boys eventually find each other, but they run into the homeless man from earlier, and the alcohol Fogel had gets smashed, leaving them only with the 2 detergent balls full of beer. They eventually make it to the party, and as they go in, it all comes out that Evan and Fogel will be rooming together at uni. Seth goes into the party and starts downing drinks. He runs into Jules and tries to make a move on her, but she rejects him, stating she doesn't want this while he's drunk. When he realises she's sober, he begins to cry, saying he's messed up his chance with her because if she was sober, she wouldn't be with him. He then passes out, falling into her, giving her a black eye. Evan has been told by one of Becca's friends that she is interested in him. He finds out she is very drunk, and is told that if he is drunk, then if anything happens, it's okay. That is not how it works. Once he's drunk, he finds Becca. They start making out, and everything is going a bit fast. Evan says that this doesn't have to happen. They can have a natural relationship first. She retorts by calling him a pussy and pukes everywhere. Seth, who has been passed out on the ground, wakes up and sees the cops from earlier show up. He rushes to find Evan. He tries to explain that they've got to go, but Evan, still angry, doesn't go with him. Slater and Michaels bust into the party, and people start scrambling. Michaels and Slater head upstairs and storm into a room where we find Fogel in the middle of having sex. Slater yells at him for ditching them, and Michaels admits they knew he wasn't a 25-year-old named McLovin. Since they cock-blocked him, they decide that to make it up to him, they'd make him look like a badass by doing a putt walk. The three of them end the night by destroying their cop car with a Molotov cocktail while Fogel shoots at it. Seth and Evan make it to Evan's house, and as they're about to go to sleep, Seth admits he knew about Evan and Fogel's plan to live together at college. Evan tells him he's only doing it because he's scared of living with a stranger. They apologise to each other and reconcile. The next day, Seth and Evan run into Jules and Becca at the mall. Becca apologises to Evan for her behaviour the night before and asks if he wants to come with her while she buys a replacement comforter for Jules' bed, which she vomited on. Seth apologises to Jules for his drunken confession and giving her a black eye. He takes her to buy some concealer so she doesn't have to have a black eye for graduation. And then the boys, they walk away from each other and they do one last lingering look, and then the film ends. Okay, that was a lot, wasn't it? So let's just take a breath, because I just explained the entire plot of Superbad. Blimey. Sorry to my teacher. This is going to be a long watch. Shame I didn't get it in on time, innit? Sorry about that. Right, let's investigate how all of that relates to the statement at hand. Superbad is the perfect example of a film in this genre. It's funny, outwardly sexual, cringe, and about teens. And it is a perfect example and perfect answer to my statement. Can films in this genre have heart? And the answer is yes. This film features two young male characters who are stepping into this next part of their life, and they are scared of being apart, being inexperienced, not being liked. The character of Seth cries because he believes he isn't good enough to be liked by someone when they're sober. He is so insecure he could only ask a girl out while thinking they were both drunk. You don't see male characters represented like that often, especially back then. Being openly insecure and upset about their looks, their personality, their weight, normally that would be played off as a joke, but in this case, it was serious. Evan wants Becca for more than just her body, and he even tries to put his foot down saying he wants to have a relationship, not just sex. He views her as a person, which again, in this genre, especially in the past, girls barely get to have brains, let alone be viewed as a human being. This scene also points out the importance of consent. Evan knows both of them being drunk is wrong. He's uncomfortable and wants to stop, even though it ends in a humorous way. It's still important, as these films, most of the time, have very big issues with sexual harassment and sexual assault plot lines. It's a problem, guys. Can we stop it? Evan and Seth fall out because overall they're scared of not being stuck to each other's side once they go to college. They love each other, and by the end of the film they aren't afraid to admit that.
It's why don't we say that every day? Why can't we say it more often?
I just love you. I just want to go to the rooftops and scream, I love my best friend Evan.
We should go up on my roof.
For sure.
A lot of the time in this genre, male friendships are big factors, but they're never seen in such a way as they are in Superbad. These boys genuinely love each other. They're in a way like brothers, and the scene where they have a heart-to-heart is quite powerful when you think about it. This whole movie, Seth and Evan have been bickering, calling each other names, but for just a moment, you see how much they care for each other, how they really care for each other. What I like most about Superbad is how it allows its sincere moments to have its time, even if it's just for a few seconds. It lets you feel the sadness Seth has at the thought of being unlikable. You feel the anger Evan holds at the thought of not being together with his best friend at uni. Despite this being a very funny movie, it has layers. It has depth. It has heart. Now, if that wasn't enough evidence for you, let's look at a few more movies, shall we? Road Trip is a film about a group of boys, 4 boys, going on a journey to intercept a sex tape that was accidentally sent to one of the guy's girlfriends. Now, let's take Ruben for example. He's the smart stoner character. In a scene near the end of the movie, he sits smoking with an older man and speaks about how growing up, he's always been very anxious and worried about everything, and weed is the only thing that can balance him out. Now, it's a short scene and is interjected by a stoned talking dog, But for the film to allow a character to talk openly about his mental health and his fears of what life is for in the 2000s is really important. Mental health has, and still in a way, is a taboo subject, especially when it comes to men's mental health. And I think it's nice to see it spoken about so openly in a film that is kind of insane for most of the movie. You know, to allow a character who is meant to be this sort of stoic, wise stoner to break for just a second and speak about his fears of what life is all about. It's pretty cool. Or let's look at the film Waiting. The character of Dean struggles most of the movie with the fact he hasn't gone anywhere in life. He has constant reminders of the fact he isn't in university or in a high-paying job. And when he gets offered a promotion, he realises he may end up stuck in this restaurant for the rest of his life. A past classmate comes in who is now living a successful life. He leaves Dean a $100 tip for a $30 meal. This is enough for Dean to turn down the promotion and decide that life doesn't end when you're 21 and that he has time to go back to college and start fresh. This is important because many young people and young adults that watch this film will probably resonate with Dean. Growing up is hard, and even though society tries to tell you there's a specific timetable of how to do it, this film shows you that there isn't any one specific way. You can set your own path. Even if it feels scary or hard to reach it, that goal that's lingering in the distance, life doesn't end when you leave high school. You have time. You've only just started living. So, where is this genre right now? Well, with films like Booksmart, Incoming, Lisa Frankenstein and Y2K, and shows like Pen 15 and Sex Education, this genre about teenagers, being gross and cringe and sincere, no matter the circumstances, is still very much alive. Trends will forever be recycled, and thanks to TikTok, more and more people are discovering these teen comedy movies, and they're being inspired by them, whether it's making skits for TikTok or going as far to creating their own teen comedy screenplay. I don't think this genre will ever go out of fashion. It is a genre that is normally incredibly over the top, but it still sits in a pocket of truth. It shows young people finding themselves, the awkwardness of growing up, the first kisses, the first big fights, first steps into adult life. It's something that we will all experience. And isn't that kind of beautiful to be represented in an ugly, gross, funny, insane world of truth, warts and all? We aren't alone in our weirdness, and we most certainly aren't alone in our beauty. With the current state of the world, what young people need more than anything is to be able to laugh, to take a break from the constant fear and anger, and if it takes someone having sex with a pie or a stoned talking dog to do that, then so be it. So if you can't tell my verdict on this case, I'll tell you. It's guilty. Guilty on account of this film genre having depth, on this film genre having heart. Since the 70s, this genre has continued to grow and change, going from just being about guys being dudes to young men being open and honest about their feelings, from women being sex objects to being the leads, from slurs being thrown about left and right to stories about people of colour and queer people not just being used for a joke. Things change, and as decades go by, we become more aware of our fellow humans and what is right and wrong. And it's nice to see a genre that definitely has had its issues grow into something that is just as funny while still being inclusive. Case closed.